All right, so this is gonna be my ninth episode, I think, of deck profiles for the Brilliant Stars to Prismatic Evolutions format. This episode is gonna be on Ting-Lu, and so yeah, um, Ting-Lu was printed in Paldea Evolved alongside the other Treasures of Ruin, um, Chempao, Chen, and Chi. And as I mentioned in my Chempao deck profile video, the Treasure Ruin all had partner Pokemon that they were like designed to be played with for that format, or and for the Scarlet and Violet format in general, right? So Chempao had Excalibur, Chen had Fortress, Chi had Armor Rouge, armored from Scarlet and Violet base set, right? And then Ting-Lu had Koraidon, right? So that's generally the angle that Pokemon was trying to go for with the Treasures of Ruin, right? And so, yeah, generally people kind of conceptualized ideas with those partner Pokemon, right? And so, Ting-Lu is the most interesting one, and I think it's also the most important one out of all of the Treasure Ruin printed, because basically what it does is it prevents a situation where people are abusing very strong single prize Pokemon abilities to gain unfair advantages on their board states, right? Because of stability there, right? Cursed land. As long as Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's Pokemon in play that have any damage counters on them have no abilities except for Pokemon EX, right? So the idea was that it was printed so that Pokemon that are like very overpowered single prize Pokemon with very overpowered abilities would not be able to take over formats, right? Um, so yeah, I think that it's very important to put out a Ting-Lu deck profile video for this format because this format has slowed down very significantly, and as a result, a lot of single prize Pokemon, very overpowered abilities, have kind of been taken over, right? Just to name a couple, Kirlia and Drakloak, right? And so this card has become infinitely more important to cover, right? Um, so on a personal note, Ting-Lu is a deck that I've been playing since it came out, and I bought my Ting-Lus practically on release, and so they Ting-Lu has a very special place in my heart, right? And so yeah, um, this is gonna be a very important video for me in particular too, right? So yeah, um, yeah, I've always advocated for Ting-Lu's place in the format. A lot of people played it at a lot of big events when it came out. I remember a game in particular of Ting-Lu and Chempao Excalibur. I think it was at I think the scores were X01 if I'm not mistaken. And that was just like round 6 or 7, right? So the Ting-Lu player got really deep into the tournament, right? So Ting-Lu has had its success, right? It's just Ting-Lu just needs more attention, basically, right? So that's kind of my contribution here, right? So just gonna get right into it. So Ting-Lu EX, it's a 240 HP fighting basic Pokemon. Like I said, has the ability Curse Land. As long as Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent's Pokemon in play have any damage counters on them have no abilities except for Pokemon EX. And it has the attack Land Scoop for 3 fighting energy, has 150 damage, put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's bench Pokemon for retreat cost and grass weakness. Right? So very good stat line, right? Um, its attack has a lot leaves a lot to be desired, but overall, this card is very solid, right? And so yeah, just on paper, it's already shown good signs, right? Um, then you put it together with its partner Pokemon, Koraidon EX from Scarlet Violet base set, 230 HP fighting basic Pokemon, has the ability Dino Cry. Once during your turn, you may attach up to 2 basic fighting energy cards from your discard pile to your basic Pokemon, fighting Pokemon, in any way you like. If you use this ability, your turn ends. It has the attack Wild Impact, 2 fighting and a colorless energy, 220 damage. During your next turn, this Pokemon can attack. Right? So pair these 2 cards together, and you get a very effective combo where you can do what's called an ability lock in the Pokemon trading card game, and you can set up the attack effectively in one turn. Right? So that's generally the design of Ting-Lu, right? So generally these cards should not be played um, separate from each other. You can play Koraidon, Koraidon is generally just a good fighting support Pokemon, but Ting-Lu shouldn't be played separately from Koraidon, right? And so, yeah, now that we have that combat established, we can kind of get into the kind of cards that are built around it for this format. So, of course, we have the Halucha from Scarlet Violet base set, 70 HP fighting Pokemon, fighting basic Pokemon, has the ability Flying Entry. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon and put 1 damage counter on each of them. Then it has the attack Fight Wing Attack, 2 fighting for fighting in 2 colors, that's 70 damage. Right? So generally you want to play this card in Ting-Lu, right? Because it basically allows you to what's called ping uh Pokemon with damage um without having to use something like Land Scoop, for example. Right? So combo is very effective in that the combo being Ting-Lu, Halucha, and Koraidon, in that whether you're going first or second, you can set up a very good board state for yourself. Right? Because you can either use Koraidon's ability when you're going first, since you're not going to attack anyways, and you get the energies up for your next turn. Or if you're going second, your opponent already set up their board, then you can use Flying Entry and you can ability lock them, right? And so that's kind of the general combo that Ting-Lu had when it came out. That was generally how you were aiming to play the Ting-Lu archetype, right? And so it also had its turn 1 draw support, which was Squawk Ability EX. Came out in Paldea Evolved. Has the ability Squawk and Seize. Once during your first turn, you may discard your hand and draw 6 cards. Can't use more than one Squawk and Seize ability per turn, right? And has the attack Motivate for colorless energy, 20 damage. Attach up to 2 basic energy cards from your discard pile to one of your bench Pokemon. Right. So on top of being able to ability lock on turn 1 and set up an attack on turn 1, you can also discard your hand and draw 6 cards on turn 1. Right. So this would be able to put the energies into the discard pile that you want to use Groudon's ability with, right? So yeah, that was basically the core of Ting-Lu for that format, right? And so for this format, Prismatic Evolutions format, we have a lot of new additions for it. So addition on top of the Squawkabilly X for draw support, you have draw support for later in the game, which is your Dudunsparce. Has the ability to runaway draw. Once during your turn, you may draw 3 cards. You drew any cards in this way, shuffle this Pokemon and all attached cards into your deck. Right. And then you also have the Mew EX, right? Has the ability to restart. Once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 3 cards in your hand. Right. So during that format, while they evolved, you didn't really have a lot of extra draw support on top of just Squawkabilly X. That was Battle Styles to how they evolved, and so all you really had was just Radiant Greninja and Luminion EX, Luminion V rather. So those weren't very, you know, um, reliable and consistent draw supports since they required combo pieces as well. These are just raw cards. Cards that just let you draw raw, right? So they're much better than something like a Radiant Greninja, which requires an energy in your hand, or a Squat Illuminate EX, which requires you to have a supporter that you can play, right? And so Ting-Lu has gotten a really big upgrade in that it can draw more effectively, right? And the other thing is that when you look at kind of Ting-Lu on paper, you notice that Ting-Lu has a very low attacking count. And what I mean by that is the number of attackers that it has is very low. Not only that, the attacks are not as, appealing as an attack like, Burning Darkness from Charizard EX, right? The reason for that is that that's kind of how the deck is supposed to be built, right? It's not supposed to have a very high amount of very powerful attackers. The deck has a purpose, and it's to ability lock. And because of that, you don't really need have um, devastating attackers to play, right? And so if it seems like Ting Wu is very bare bones in its attacker count, then it's because it's supposed to be like that, right? And on that note, another addition that we have to Ting-Lu for this format is Blood Moon Ursaluna, right? So Blood Moon Ursaluna came out in Shadow Fable, 150 HP fighting basic Pokemon, has the ability Battle Hardened. You play this card from your hand onto your bench during your turn. You attach up to 2 basic fighting energy cards from your hand to this Pokemon. Then it has the attack Mad Bite for 2 fighting energies and a colorless energy. 100 plus. This attack does 30 more damage for each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon. Right. So traditionally, Ting-Lu isn't known for having very devastating attacker, but with the addition of Blood Mirror Luna to it, now you have that option for a devastating attacker. Right. So that's kind of what makes Ting-Lu appealing for this format. Is that Ting-Lu's draw supports have become more reliable, and now Ting-Lu has a more devastating attacker. Right. So on top of that, a lot of what I've been talking about in some of my other deck profile videos is that baby Pokemon have kind of been neglected for the most part throughout these formats, particularly the Scarlet and Violet formats. And with the addition of Badu to our archive of Scarlet and Violet, baby Pokemon have become more appealing to people, right? So now you're seeing a lot of people playing baby Pokemon in their decks, particularly Badoo, right? Originally, people were just generally playing like Cleffa in decks like Regidrago and Charizard, and that was kind of as far as people went, right? Um, and so with the popularity of baby Pokemon rising, I figured Ting-Lu should have a baby Pokemon in it as well. And so for this format, I added Elekid to this archetype. Elekid's 30 HP basics lightning Pokemon. Has the attack crack in the shop for free. This attack does 30 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. Right. So anyone on the board, you can do 30 damage. Right. But with the popularity of baby Pokemon, generally Elekid's goal is to snipe a baby Pokemon that might be a menace on the board. Right. And so pairing that with the combo of adding Iron Valiant EX from Scarlet and Violet from Paradox Rift, you can add a lot of switch cards to your deck so that you can get the Elekid into active, right? So Iron Valiant historically is known for playing a lot of switch cards with it, and so this deck is no different. Play the Iron Valiant EX, which has the ability to attack you on bits once during your turn. This Pokemon moves from your bench to the active spot. You may put 2 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. And so this is so that you can ping more, basically. Right. And so you have a lot of options for pinging, have a lot of options for baby Pokemon, and you have a lot of options for devastating attacks. Right. And that's kind of what makes Ting-Lu so amazing in this format is that it's no longer just a wall that's stopping you from using abilities, right? It has a progression, right? So that's the Pokemon line, right? So we play 2 copies of Ting-Lu, play 2 copies of Koraidon, we play 2 copies of Blood Moon Ursaluna, right? So for the trainer lines, so generally Ting-Lu doesn't have very good draw support, so you're gonna need a lot of draw supporters. So you play 4 Professor's Research, play 3 Ionos. Top of that, you play 1 Surfer, so that you have an option for switching in your supporter line, right? That also lets you draw, right? So supported Surfer is a very powerful card, and so in a deck that needs a lot of switching, you want to play at least 1 copy, right? So for the switching options, we just play 4 switch cards, and that's pretty much all we're gonna need, right? Once we set up the board state, you're not gonna need extra switches to pick off low HP Pokemon. You want to get your damage down, and then you want to take the advantage. For retrieval cards, we play 2 Night Stretchers. Card pairs very well with Bloodmoon Ursaluna EX, and so you don't want to play too many since once you set up the Bloodmoon Ursaluna attack, you're good to go. And so just play 2 copies so you can get it off, right? Play 2 Gusts, Boss's Orders. Not gonna need too many. It's just so that you can hit them. You have a lot of draw support, so the more copies you play, the higher chances you play, right? And you don't want to play too many because on top of the 2 bosses, you play 1 Palpad. So if you need to get extra bosses orders, you can just play Palpad and you get them back. For search, play 4 Ultra Balls, 4 Nest Balls, 2 Earthen Vessels, right? Um, Again, this deck is very fast in terms of setting up, and so It's not necessarily that you want to get to your energies immediately. You just want to be able to have cards that can get you to the energies. So there's no reason to be playing more than 2 copies. Then for tool cards, play one future booster energy capsule for the Iron Valiant, one heavy baton for the Ting-Lu and the Blood Moon Ursaluna, and 2 bravery charms. In our ace spec, we play Scoop Up Cyclone. Right. So in a deck where a lot of cards function off of being played from your hand, such as Blood Moon Ursaluna and Halucha, having Scoop Up Cyclone is invaluable. Then we play 1 penny. So we basically have effectively 2 Scoop Up Cyclones in our deck. Then for Stadium, we play 2 Town Star. Right, so we play 4 copies of tool cards, and so we don't play a card like Arvin. So to get them, play 2 copies of Town Star. Right, and for our energy count, we play 8 fighting energies. Right, so that's generally the core of the deck. And then for our draw support, the Dunsparce, we play 3 copies of the Dunsparce, and we play 3 copies of Dunsparce. Right, so this just basically allows us to loop our Dudunsparces very easily, and it's not clogging our deck with the Dunsparce because that's not the point of the deck. The point of the deck is the Ting-Lus, and so you don't want to have a heavy count like 4. So play just 3 copies just so you can hit them, right? And then we just play one of each other draw supporter, one Squawkabilly EX and one Mew EX, right? Then play one Halucha, and we play one Iron Valiant EX, and then of course one baby Pokemon. So that's generally how you kind of want to go for playing Ting-Lu in this format, and you want to kind of experiment with Ting-Lu. Most important thing to remember is that if your deck feels like it doesn't have a lot of power, because Ting-Lu isn't designed to be a very powerful deck, right? There's a lot of powerful fighting Pokemon in this format, such as like Hisuian Arcanine, right? Or like Conqueror, if you want to go a little crazy, right? But you're not going to want to try to consider playing cards like that with Ting-Lu because, again, Ting-Lu has a design and should play towards its design ultimately, right? So, yeah. Um, so I don't think I'm going to do a deck showcase video for this deck, generally because deck is more suited for tabletop. Um, so, yeah. Think for Ting-Lu, I'll just leave it there. And if you want to experiment, again, just remember the concepts. And yeah, um, just don't kind of take your Pokemon Trader Card Game Live results as anything to, you know, conclude the strength of Ting-Lu, right? Like I said, this deck is more suited for tabletop because of kind of how it's designed. So, in a virtual setting like Pokemon Trader Card Game Live, you're gonna have way different results than in person playing at events like a local or a challenge or a cup or even a regional, right? And so if you want to test this deck in a more optimal environment, definitely tabletop would be better. But if you want to play it in Pokemon Trading Card Game Live, then go ahead, right? So yeah, this has been Ting Lu. If you want more insight on this format, check out my other deck profile videos. And thank you for listening. I'll see you in the next video.